to noon.
Just listen.
Shall we begin?
Thank you, Minneapolis.
Isn't that something? Wasn't that good?
Sorry, KFAN.
And winter is coming.
There's something wrong with you. Oh, please.
Super Bowl, homeboy.
Oh, good.
Oh, that came stabbing in there, didn't it, on a Wednesday? Hello. This is 9 to noon. Good morning. Paul Allen Order by my side. Back at the ranch.
Thank you, St. Paul.
For this.
It's Martin Natchez now. Acquired from the Hurricanes in that Mikko Rantanen deal. He's 0 for 1 on the season. He'll pick up the puck. Starts wide left. Gustafsson out to greet him. Natchez through the high slot. Fumbled it. Got it back. Lost it. And the Wild win. Natchez fumbled it into the corner. Gustafsson didn't even have to flinch. And Minnesota gets a huge 2 points in the standings. They beat the Avalanche 2-1 in the shootout.
Let's wait for Senor Spotty to get properly in his car. KG, Gorgomatic 21. Lover of the Wild. Let's wait for him to turn on FM 100.3 KFAN. KG, how about your squad last night, brother? Big underdogs at home against McKinnon and all them new Avs, and they found a way to win in a shootout, and Zuki and Boldy left them all wide-eyed in the shootout. We're like, Brock Nelson, who? Charlie Coyle, what? Nathan McKinnon, who? Alan Roach, what? Big win last night for the Minnesota Wild. And as big as that victory was in the standings for the Minnesota Wild, it was equally as big for 9 to noon. You may ask why. Because we have Vox in the Box tomorrow at Tria, and the last thing we wanted to do was roll into a Vox in the Box for a morning skate with a grouchy coach and a team that can't score and lost to the Avs.
Thank goodness.
Yes, that was Boldy with the sweet deke left, and then just went to clowning the Avalanche goaltender, and I was like, yes, happiness at Tria on Thursday for Bizzle in the Bizzle.
It's so smooth when you see guys like Boldy make some. I mean, I'm just trying to picture the physics involved in the quick turn.
Phenomenal.
And he's yawning his way through that beautiful move last night. Love that.
Yeah, man. I think the goalie's name was Blackwood. My man should change his name to Redwood because we put him in the red.
Amen, brother.
Timberwolves have a huge one tonight at Denver. We're ready to howl. It's one they will win this evening, too. They're at Denver. They're underdogs, and I truly believe they'll win tonight and beat the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets are hot. The T-Wolves are hot, and something has to give this evening between those two constituents, and I'm ready to howl. We are ready to howl. A night before that Box in the Box tomorrow. But NFL free agency is still the A topic, 9 to noon.
Free agency never fails on the Quasi train. Free agency never fails on the Quasi train.
Super plugged in NFL guy Michael Silver. Are you familiar with the name Michael Silver?
Michael Silver, I am indeed.
Yeah, he's super plugged in guy. I believe he lives in the Bay Area. I see him at every single Vikings 49ers game. Saw him at the Indianapolis Scouting Combine, and he would be considered a heavy hitter in the world of National Football League reporting. But he's not a singles hitter. He's not breaking Mekhi Becton this, breaking Will Fries that, breaking Joe Flacco this, and breaking Cam Bynum that.
So he's patient at the plate.
Yes, patient at the plate, sits back and waits to swing, but he also sends out covert tweets. And and my man had a covert tweet yesterday, and I've been thinking a little bit about it ever since it popped. And I'd like to share it with everybody now for those who missed it.
Now, is this like Stephon Diggs cryptic tweets?
The very, very...
A little bit of emotion sends you down certain directions. Maybe you didn't want to go when you just stumbled upon it while doom scrolling, or are these a different sort of cryptic? Okay, perfect.
I'd say different because I'm not completely sure for whom Michael Silver works. So with these cryptic tweets, I have no idea if he's ripping his bosses.
I always love that one.
I don't really know who follows Michael Silver on a day-by-day basis.
I think he's in the Athletic family now.
Okay, yeah, right. So I don't know if the cryptic tweets are ripping the likes of Robert Mays, Mike Sando, Alec Lewis, or John Krasinski.
I always love that one.
But they're cryptic, and he did it again yesterday. Let's see. Paraphrasing, he's like, Kevin O'Connell has final say with the Vikings quarterback moves, and some very interesting conversations are being had. Okay, now that's that. So, all right, anybody can put that out.
Yeah.
Michael's close with Aaron Rodgers. Michael's very close with Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, no.
And he says some very interesting conversations are being had after he writes Kevin O'Connell has final say with the Vikings QB moves. I absolutely buy into the former, but when it comes to the latter, some interesting conversations being had, unfurled via the tweet machine when it works, by a person who's very close with Aaron Rodgers. Now, Michael is based in Northern California. Aaron Rodgers, according to the tweet machine, currently happens to be in Northern California because I saw him throwing passes at Sierra Leone High School out San Mateo way. Is there anything to put together here? Despite all the reports yesterday that Aaron Rodgers and Pittsburgh are working on deals as of yesterday afternoon, and then like Pitt constituents, the cohorts working in the media world looking to break news, they were just sitting back waiting for Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin to get together, with the fallback plan being Russell Wilson. And then Michael Silver comes up with gold. Aaron Rodgers ain't going to be here.
I don't think he's going to be here.
Yeah, if Aaron Rodgers is here, then
I mean, this is classic.
Rodgers is here.
This is no different than the idle hands nature of Cousins a year ago.
Yeah.
Will he stay? Will he go?
Yeah.
And then the deadline hits and he moves on. Mm-hmm. In some ways, will he stay? Will he go? We kind of played a little bit of that idle hands with Sam Darnold this year. Always kind of made sense financially that he would find his way to another team.
Yeah.
But we speculated and all of that. Similarly here, he can't actually physically sign a deal until this afternoon when the league year starts and he's officially released from the Jets. So I think we're just waiting on things. It does not make sense.
Correct.
Now, Favre was on TV yesterday. Brett was on a network, and he was talking like, go do it, man. They got all the weapons.
He did not.
He did. No big deal.
I don't think Brett even knows J.J. McCarthy's on the team.
He may not. Then that's true. He's going through his own things right now as well. But to that end, play for the Packers, go to the Jets, then come to Minnesota, make some memories, cross the body. Next year, let's not take pictures of our private parts, etc. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to try and live out that same sequence of events. Feels like the train stops in New York for him, and he either goes to Pittsburgh or maybe the Giants. I saw, it was interesting hearing whether it was it Garofalo, was it Rap Sheet? I forget who it was, but it was NFL Network yesterday. And you can tell me if I'm off on this, because I know about Malik Neighbors. They have some players over there. It's not completely destitute, but all the same, they were kind of speaking as if it was a tough decision on whether to go be with Tomlin in Pittsburgh or try to figure out Dable and just kind of that rat's nest of a bad team right now. That's a bad team in the Giants. And as if that was a tough decision. Unless it's money related, how is that a difficult decision? I don't know. But I know in my heart that Minnesota is not a part of those decisions that will be made today.
It's
McCarthy season.
It's a difficult decision because certain people don't prefer to be told what to do. And Mike Tomlin ain't having somebody come into the covenant who's not willing to go back and forth with the old communication game. And if your communicative ways are that of one way, then he'll try to whip you into shape. And maybe Aaron doesn't like that. No idea, but I'm not a 0 or a 100. I'm not a best ever or a worst ever or an absolute kind of guy. But nevertheless, this is pretty close to, see, this is what free agency does to minds.
Free agency never fails on the Quasi train. Free agency never fails on the Quasi
Never fails.
Dalvin Tomlinson was cut by Cleveland. He was the love we lost when he left after 2022.
Remember that second season he had, how good it was?
Dalvin, he never got a chance to run with old B-Flow. Wouldn't mind him returning to the Covenant. I have no steam. I'm just offering an opinion. Can one truly make Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Cooper Kupp, and TJ Hawkinson work? At first blush, you would say, well, of course you can. But just think that out a little bit as the day navigates itself. Can one truly make Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Cooper Kupp, and TJ Hawkinson work? Those are a lot of mouths to be fed. But Cooper Kupp's going to be an A topic today around the National Football League. Should Green Bay be interested in Cooper Kupp? Should Green Bay be interested in wide receiver Cooper Kupp? Now, that comes up because...
Excuse me while I whip this out.
It's because free agency does weird things to people. The reason I think Green Bay should be interested in Cooper Kupp is if only to stop Josh Jacobs from saying, can we get a true number one receiver up in this thing? Hey!
Where is that team without Jacobs last year?
I don't know. I don't know, man. But where is the team in 2025, given its signature running back is like, can we get a good wide receiver up in this mix so we can win some more games?
The Duke is on fire!
And finally, for the opening segment, how about the San Francisco 49ers? This is what it looks like when a Super Bowl winning window slams on one's fingers, and the entire fan base is feeling the pain. I mean, this is just zany.
Yeah.
Gone. Deebo Samuel, trade Washington. Dre Greenlaw, Charvarius Ward, Kyle Juszczyk.
They released him.
The Swiss Army knife is out there ready to put a gotcha on somebody. Chris Conley, Josh Dobbs. Who knew? Aaron Banks, Leonard Floyd, Devondre Campbell. Why? Because he quit in the middle of a game, which has some fat L to it. And not only does it have some fat L to it, but after Devondre Campbell quit on the San Francisco 49ers, his first reaction when responding to it was to remind us all how much money he makes. That's really, really cool when things like that happen.
Losing Hufanga, too.
Defensive tackle Malik Collins, cornerback Nick McLeod, cornerback Rock Ya-Sin, safety Talanoa Hufanga, safety Tayshaun Gibson, defensive lineman Javon Hargrave, who very well could be a Minnesota Viking today. That's a beef eater with some strength. Offensive tackle Jalen Moore, I believe he went to Kansas City. Offensive tackle Charlie Heck, tight end Eric Salbert, running back Elijah Mitchell, and their punter Pat O'Donnell. They kicked him out of the Covenant too. I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, that's when you have a window of opportunity to capture a crown, and you have an elite coaching staff, and you have a quarterback who knows his way around the gym, and then you got Kittle, and then you got McCaffrey, and you have Ayuk. Ayuk is on fire! And you don't close on the deal. 2019, trade for Emmanuel Sanders to make one play in the Super Bowl. And he makes the play straight down the field to the end zone. Old Jimmy Garoppolo.
Oh, no.
My man with the high cheekbones. Well, he overthrew him.
Yeah,
You lucky suckers.
And
throw matched his cheekbones.
and that was your dagger right there. And that was like the window was still wide open. The curtains were blowing and the eggs were cool and the butter was getting hard and the jello was jiggling.
Man, it's bad, dude. Purdy, final year of his deal. Kittle's final year of his deal. 2 years left with Trent. They still have to pay 3 more years of McCaffrey. 2 of them are at a good number, but he's never healthy.
Right.
I mean, that is the meltdown.
That's if you're a 49ers fan, this is what it feels like
The milk's gone bad.
when the metaphorical window slams down on your cliched fingers.
Allen, up and at him.
And it hurts. It don't feel good. But we'll navigate our way through this too during the course of 9 to noon today, beginning with Mike Florio at about 9:40, then with Alec Lewis from The Athletic at about 11 o'clock. The fact that the 49ers, they do have a long play with all of these cuts. They get a record 25 comp picks. They're getting like 25 comp picks. Are they all next year? Well, that's why we have Florio and Alec Lewis in the Covenant to help us with that. I mean, they the name Brock Purdy came up. They can't possibly love Brock Purdy, but like him enough to give him a big fat deal that looks like they love him. Windows slamming on fingers and faces are that of chagrin when it comes to the 49ers fan base, but here we are. The Giants act like they know the quarterback they love in the draft will be there at 3, and the Titans and Browns are going bam, bam with quarterbacks 1-2 if they do that. Well, the old Daboll plan may be foiled. It is hot free agency action reported on 9 to noon in second to none fashion. Order produces, and I'm Paul Allen. And all of that is courtesy of TimberTech and TimberTech.com. So what's on deck? What's on deck, TimberTech and TimberTech.com? What's on deck, Jesse Singh? We have Vikes Bites next, then Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com. And at 10 o'clock up in the neighborhood, Matt Taylor, the play-by-play voice for the Indianapolis Colts. We're going to execute a little trade 9 to noon. We're going to help him with some Cam Bynum and Daniel Jones intel, and he's going to help us with some Ryan Kelly and Will Fries intel. And Lord knows I couldn't be more excited for that. That's about 10:03.
Football feast.
After that, shockingly more football, given it's J.J. McCarthy season, as the producer would say. But with the major wave of free agency done for the Minnesota Vikings, the question begs, what does that mean for the draft in the 24 spot? We will get into that middle of the radio show. And Alec Lewis from The Athletic jumpstarts the final hour at 11 o'clock. Nordo produces, and I'm Paul Allen. Thank you, TimberTech and TimberTech.com. It's 9:17 in the neighborhood. The neighborhood is the 651 Carpets Plus Studios, adjacent to Erotic City in the cornfields of Minnesota. This is FM 100.3 KFAN. Good morning.
Vikes Bites.
Welcome back, 9 to noon. Vikes Bites is presented by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. To Matt and everybody up in Clearwater, it's a Minnesota company, support local, but elite, nutrient-dense, regenerative, agriculturally raised beef. And you can shop online. A box of meat will show up to your doorstep. You can go to Coburn's, Co-ops, and Kowalski's. Oh, and by the way, they're proud sponsors of Gophers Athletics. First, before we take a look around the NFC North, PA.
Free agency never fails on the Quasi train.
Sing that all day, Rube Nation.
There was a move that's made, somebody leaving the nest, and his name is Trent Sherfield, PA. He has signed a 2-year deal with the Denver Broncos for $6 million, 1.5 of it guaranteed. But Trent Sherfield can be added to the list of the outbox. We got a lot to deal with on the inbox. We are waiting, as you mentioned. League year starts. Javon Hargrave expected to be released by the 49ers. And news and reporting has been done that says he's going to be signing a deal with the Minnesota Vikings today. So excited for that. 3 p.m. Central is the time. Set your watches. And that's when the new league year opens. That's when others will be released. And free agency will continue its way forward post the initial fat wave.
Sounds like a wide receiver spot is open in the room for Cooper Kupp.
Interesting indeed. To the NFC North. An interesting look at our foes in the North, PA. I'm going to start with the Chicago Bears. So in free agency thus far, center Coleman Shelton is gone. He went to the Rams. Running back Darrington Evans to the Bills, and tackle Larry Borum to the Dolphins. So that's who they have lost via signing with other teams.
Thank you.
Now in the door, they kept their long snapper, Scott Daly. They love Scotty. But then otherwise, we know about them adding Joe Tooney and then Jonah Jackson to the O-line. Those were signed previously, some trade acquisitions. But as soon as free agency began, it was like 5 minutes into it. Drew Dahlman, the former Atlanta Falcons center, he did a 3-year, $42 million deal. 28 of that's guaranteed. Then Grady Jarrett, speaking of quick timing, he was released from the Falcons, and before Schefter could even tweet about it, Grady Jarrett was signing to deal with the Bears.
Somehow I fell into doom scrolling last night.
Yes.
And it was like the trending thing on the right of Twitter you'll see. Maybe it populates because of like what you're interested in or whatever. I don't hit it frequently.
Sure.
But it said Cousins. So I hit Cousins just to see what was out there.
What's going on with Kirko?
Well, and what was happening was the Atlanta Falcons fan base just absolutely savaging the young man because Grady Jarrett left. And it's like if we didn't do this, we'd still have Grady
if we just drafted Penix.
So then I looked a little more deeply into Grady Jarrett, who happens to be like a Peachtree, Georgia native.
Yes.
So I mean, it's like they lost. It's like their Adam Thielen had to leave because of what is being called the worst free agent deal in the history of Atlanta sports. And they sense when the league year begins today at 4 Peachtree time, 3 Cornfields time, the Cousins is going to be in another covenant. And they still lost Grady Jarrett.
Well, I don't know if this will be part of the Florio conversation, but he did post an article last night talking about kind of going through, okay, here's what your options are. And that includes, because he's owed 27 and change in 2025.
Yeah.
We've talked about it. If they do release him and he signs with the team, that 27 can be offset by whatever new team signs him for. But as we saw with Russell Wilson, I mean, a new team's going to give him a small deal, and he's going to get paid mostly by the Falcons.
Yeah.
But that $10 million in 2026 that's also guaranteed is worth looking into as well. Florio did a good job of kind of breaking down, but he left the door open for the idea that if the Falcons, they don't want to participate in all the financial malaise and such and paying for a guy that's not on the team, they can keep him. I mean, they can keep Kirk on the team and roll with Penix as the starter. So we're sitting here with Gessling yesterday saying, hey, I don't know if he'd go somewhere else and consider a true competition. And I definitely don't see Kirk being in mentor mode. I also see him leaving here probably would exhaust most other options before considering returning here. But all the same, what if they just don't cut him? So I don't know if Florio's got steam on it. But his dogged reporting is available at Pro Football Talk.
We had no Cousins in the Florio covenant. We're going to start with Vikings free agency. We need a veteran backup quarterback. Who does he like? I have an opinion. Then we get into the Niners and Brock Purdy, and we're going to put the Cousins covenant right after that. Thank you.
Okay, sweet. So at any rate, they signed Drew Dahlman. They signed Grady Jarrett, Georgia's finest. And then they got Deo Dangbo from the Indianapolis Colts. So they're beefing up on the lines as well. We like what we're doing in Minnesota. The Bears have made that an issue as well. And then Durham Smythe, a tight end out of Miami. Some other things to watch. Tooney's just a 1-year deal. Braxton Jones, upcoming free agent decision. Tyreek Stevenson, just a couple years left. But most of their big-timers actually have multiple years left on their deals. Keenan Allen, Tevin Jenkins, Gerald Everett, the ageless Mercedes Lewis. They have 23 other guys, though, currently on the docket to be released later today and enter free agency.
Ben
officially.
Johnson, new coach for the Bears. He pulls the strings. Ryan Poles, the general manager. I mean, he puts it together, but you don't give Ben 13 having never done that job if he doesn't get a chance to pull strings. That's just how it works.
Right.
So it's clear that he has some smartest guy in the room to him, but it doesn't mean this is going to be who he is the rest of his head coaching career. And what I mean is before free agency and everybody got all hot and bothered, he went to trading for players.
Yeah.
Then he sat out the hot and heavy first wave of free agency and came sliding in the back door for the Durham Smythes of the world. So I can navigate the map and the pinpoints on it that he's following. Now we got to see if it works.
To the Lions, PA, out the door, Carlton Davis. That was somebody we were watching for. He gets 20 a year to the Patriots. Fatu Melifonwu, I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Nailed
His safety, he goes to the Dolphins. Now, staying in the door, they kept Dan Skipper. So they're going heavy. They kept Danny Skipper.
Wow.
But then they added DJ Reed at 3-48 from the Jets. And defensive tackle, I'm not familiar with him, Roy Lopez from the Cardinals on a 1-year bid.
Yeah.
For the Kitties, very good. Still should be favored to win the NFC North in 2025. Just a couple years left on Ragnow and Glasgow's contract, so the O-line, as good as it's been, sneakily maybe be on watch for that.
Yeah.
Fifth-year option decision looming on Jamison Williams, I believe, this spring. So that's something to pay attention to. Sam Laporta, a couple years left, of course, on the 4-year deal for him. So, but Zadarius Smith, Kevin Zeitler, Emmanuel Mosley, Levi Onwuzurike, John Kaminsky, Tim Patrick, etc. They have 23 guys that are set to enter the world free and clear later this afternoon.
The best addition the Detroit Lions will get via the offseason has nothing to do with free agency and everything to do with old Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson will be playing for them again next year, and he a handful.
Well, and Anzalone as well, being fully healthy. I mean, he missed some games, and ultimately, I believe he came back against the Rams, or against
Vikings,
against us in the finale. Yes. Excuse me, but getting healthy, they missed Montgomery for a stretch. But he was back towards the end of the season as well. But yes, getting healthy, an A topic for the Kitties.
Yeah, they good.
Now, finally, in the NFC North, as we look around different moves, what are the Packers up to? Well, out the door, TJ Slayton. Some people call him Taddarel, his family. The rest of us call him TJ Slayton. 2 and a 14-year, $14 million deal. 5 of it's guaranteed to the Bengals.
Wow, that's a nice deal for the Bengals, man.
Well, it's not bad. They're bringing B.J. Hill back. They re-signed him. They get T.J. Slayton. I think they got another D lineman thus far as well, the Bengals did. But the key to that is Trey Hendrickson wants a ton of cash entering final year of his deal. He wants to be traded. So I'm curious how that plays out in the coming days.
Yeah.
So they get rid of Slayton and Eric Stokes. Eric Stokes, former first-round corner. He gets a deal with the Raiders. In the door, Aaron Banks. This is it, and it's we talked about it with like Byron Murphy's deal, 35 and change guaranteed, something like that. And you see the 3 and 66, you're like, whoa! And then you get the details.
Yeah.
Aaron Banks, $4 and $77 million. They get him. He's one of the escapees from the Bay, from Alcatraz, escaped from Alcatraz, all these Niners players.
The Pro Football Focus group had him as the top-ranked guard in free agency.
But now there have been a lot of arguments though over that the last couple of days about that since he joined. PFF says this, other sites say that. I've seen mostly Packers fans are happy and they want to get that O-line working well in front of Jordan Love, of course.
Right.
But of that 4 and 77, only 27 of it's guaranteed. So again, like the fat number on a contract versus how it's actually going to play out. The Packers then also signed Nate Hobbs from the Raiders. So Eric Stokes to the Raiders, Nate Hobbs, 4 and 48 to the Packers at corner.
Yep.
But only 16 of that is guaranteed. So again, the numbers look big. How much is guaranteed? More important to the mix. But interesting enough for the Packers, Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt. They got to make 5th-year option decisions on them. You have Romeo Dobbs and Igbare, linebacker. They have Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker, all of them in their final years. And Jair Alexander, by the way, is still on the roster as we're speaking here at 9:34 a.m. So what are they going to do with Jair Alexander? 2 years left on that deal. But A.J. Dillon, Corey Ballantyne, Eric Wilson, Josh Myers, those are some of the names of, I think, 11 guys that are set to still enter free agency. So the Packers in their spot, that's what the Packers look like as of now, PA.
Goody's playing fast.
Yeah, I might punch him in the face.
How, Vikings fans, how would your day feel if, like, you're negotiating the time and your job and navigating your way through L's, and then all of a sudden it pops that not only have the Green Bay Packers traded for Trey Hendrickson, but they've also found their way to Cooper Kupp.
Never heard anyone in my life who's more insane than Paul Allen.
That would be negatory.
Yes, it would.
The silence you hear is Lambeau Field.
Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com, joins the fray when 9 to noon continues at FM 100.3 KFAN. The 9 to noon train rolls on.
Free agency never fails on the Quasi train. Free agency never fails on the Quasi train.
Joining Joining us now is Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com and NBC's Football Night in America, also an author of several books. Learn more at PFT. Yeah, you know we, and here he is. Speaking of ProFootballTalk.com, I would imagine PFT setting records this week with all the hot free agency action, right?
I don't know where it compares all time, but I've detected about a 30% bump this year in traffic the last couple of days, and a lot of it just has to do with the fact that everybody wants to know where these guys are going to go. It's not a deep and robust free agent class. Teams are getting smarter and smarter about keeping the guys they value and not letting them sniff the open market. But still, teams have needs, teams have money, and there's a finite number of players who are available every year. It's like the draft. You're still going to use your draft picks in a weak draft class. You're still going to use your money in a weak free agent class. And some of these other moves surrounding free agency have made it even more compelling with the quarterback carousel, guys who are going to be cut, guys who have been traded and who still could be traded. This is just the time of year where not just hardcore, because the scouting combine's for the hardcore, over-the-top fan. Free agency is for the hardcore and the mainstream fan who just wants to know, what is my team going to have this year? What are we losing? What are we gaining? And how do I feel like 0-0 can become enough wins to get to the playoffs and maybe make some noise?
You know,
PFT.
with the combine and the season going to 17 games, PFT predicts eventually it'll go to 18, maybe 20. I'm not one to argue with that. And then the Super Bowl thus is later. The NFL scouting combine has become 90% about free agency and the legal tampering and 10% about the rookies. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think from a news standpoint, because the scouting combine is probably the biggest single NFL convention of the year, and it lasts the longest. All the teams are there. All the agents are there. They have an agent meeting in Indianapolis, so they're in town. And it's the easiest opportunity for agents and players and teams, specifically agents and teams, to engage in the illegal tampering that happens all the time because there's no digital trail of it. They meet face-to-face. They talk face-to-face, and that lays a lot of the foundation for the moves that happened this week. Look, once the clock struck 11 cornfields on Monday, look at how many deals got done. Do you think those deals were negotiated from start to finish in the minutes that passed from 11 o'clock to when we saw the deals? No. And when you see guys taking one-year deals like Hassan Reddick, he does a one-year deal with Tampa Bay right out of the gates. Do you think he didn't know what wasn't out there by way of long-term deals before he accepted that? So a lot of this stuff happens over the weekend. And, for example, Paul, there is no way in hell that John Schneider, entering year 16 as the general manager of the Seattle Seahawks, traded Geno Smith on Friday night without knowing damn well who he was going to replace him with and how much he was going to pay. There's no way. And I'm not picking on Schneider here. When in Rome, and the way the Romans behave is they tamper. And for the most important position on a team, you do not let Geno Smith go unless you know who you're replacing him with and why. And for $33.5 million a year, that's a dollar-for-dollar better value for the Seahawks than what Geno Smith wanted.
Yeah.
He wanted more than $40 million per year, so they call that shot. They make that decision, and they don't do it blindly. They don't trade Geno Smith and say, well, we'll see what happens on Monday.
Well, Monday and early in the week's been big for the Minnesota Vikings, clearly. A couple of outside of bringing players back, Aaron Jones. Now Byron Murphy, he got himself a big deal, like 22 per, but the real money has not been unfurled, at least on ProFootballTalk.com.
Which means it's not 22.
Right.
You know how this goes. You know how this game goes. And it's funny because one of the executives at NBC asked me on Monday, why do all of the people who are reporting these deals mention the agents at the end? And this is the convention that's developed. The agent gives you the information. They give you whatever numbers they want to tell you. You pass them along without asking because he who hesitates loses the thumb race to social media. And the quid pro quo for the agent is mention the agent at the end of the tweet. That's how it's become over the past several years. And it's the formula. Player, team, contract per sources, deal negotiated by agent, who happens to be the source, and there's no questions asked, no one double clutches, no one stops to think about it, and the truth gets its pants on 1, 2, 3, 4 days later, if it ever even bubbles up. All that anyone remembers are the big numbers that get put out there on the first day of free agency.
Yeah, ProFootballTalk.com and the Milton Williams deal to the Patriots. And I read that yesterday. And it's like later in the deal, the amount he gets per game and then for like the offseason workout plan, I mean, all of that plays into it. In the business, we call it real money. Now for here, couple of O linemen, some defensive linemen, with a Hargrave potentially today, a super fast corner, and Isaiah Rodgers. What do you think of the approach they've taken here, Michael?
Well, look, it's all about closing gaps. And the gap you close depends upon where you're starting and where you're trying to go. The Vikings are trying to close the gap between themselves and the Eagles, and they have an opportunity to become the clear number 3, maybe number 2 team in the conference. The 49ers are dismantling their Super Bowl team. 11 starters from Super Bowl 58 are gone.
Yeah.
Half the team, at least from a starting lineup standpoint for that game against the Chiefs that the 49ers led in the second half, are gone. And that's stunning. And the 49ers are slipping back into the pack. So the Vikings trying to close the gap with the Lions and with the Eagles, and they're trying to do it with primarily the most important parts of any team, offensive and defensive line. The defensive line needs to have better players. Brian Flores, the coordinator, has done a great job of masking the talent deficiencies on that side of the ball. You get more talent, the defense gets better. And on offense, the weak link, frankly, is the offensive line. Yes, great pass blocking, not great run blocking. And Jim Mora the Younger used to refer to needing dirt bags on the offensive line in a good way. You need guys who are going to kick ass, take names, and kick ass again. And they're hoping that these two guys they got from Indianapolis can bring some of that. We're going to come out there and we're going to bully you. That's what football is. It's man against man. It's still inherently violent, even as the sport has evolved toward a greater sensitivity to health and safety. There's only so healthy and safe football can be. At the end of the day, you got to line a guy up who's going to beat the guy physically who's across from him.
All right, so Danny Dimes, the former Giant, heads out Indianapolis way, and Nick Mullins follows former Vikings coach Grant Udinski to Jacksonville. So if Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings covet a backup quarterback, any out there you think makes sense?
Well, they need a veteran, obviously,
Please don't
with
say
Darnold and Mullins and Jones now gone. Sims and I were talking about this today. The possibility of Aaron Rodgers lurking is still there. I don't know what's going to happen. And I think if Rodgers waits too long to make a decision, some of his options are going to dry up. Right now, he's got the Steelers, the Giants, with this vague, bizarre, but not all that bizarre sense of the Vikings and Rodgers continuing the Brett Favre career arc. And you remember 2009 very well. You knew it was special from the moment that in that game against San Francisco, who's the guy that Favre hit with the frozen rope at the back of the end zone to win the game?
Greg Lewis.
Right. That was the moment that you knew, I knew, and everybody knew this year is going to be different. So the lure of that, of giving J.J. McCarthy another year to sit and learn and develop and grow and plug in Rodgers, I don't think that's gone. And until Rodgers signs somewhere, or until the Vikings sign a Jameis Winston or one of these other available guys, a Drew Lock, right? Somebody that's not like Lock. People are going to say, well, who cares? But you put Lock in that offense with Kevin O'Connell, you may get a guy who is better than he's ever been, because we saw it last year with Sam Darnold. We saw it with Josh Dobbs. We've seen some of it with Nick Mullins. O'Connell can make a guy better than he's ever been, and what veteran quarterback who's looking to re-energize his career or get it off the ground in the first place wouldn't want to come to Minnesota? And even if he enters as number 2, we don't know if J.J. McCarthy's going to be healthy. The guy that takes the 1 year $8 million, 1 year $10 million, whatever it is, that guy could end up being next year's Sam Darnold, and that's got to be an attraction for any of these available veterans. And again, until the Vikings call the shot with one of those guys that's out there as a backup, the possibility of Brett Favre all over again is still just kind of lingering out there. No one talks about it. No one really thinks about it, although I'm thinking about it and talking about it a lot because I think it could happen. I think the chances are low, but again, until he signs or the Vikings sign someone else as a veteran, the possibility, the non-0% possibility is out there.
I like Joe Flacco for a backup if we're going to go with a veteran. And quite honestly, I wish he was the backup here in 2023 when they went Dobbs and Mullins and Jaron Hall after Kirk O'Chains went down at Lambeau.
Could have signed him. He was available to anyone.
Right. And Stefanski got him, and they made the playoffs. If Joe Flacco had been the quarterback here in 2023, the Vikings would have made the playoffs. What do you think?
Well, I mean, we have no way of disproving that proposition. Mm-hmm. But Flacco was twice the highest paid player in the NFL, Super Bowl MVP, won the Comeback Player of the Year award for his limited work with the Browns that year, but prompting the Associated Press to change the definition of the award.
Yeah.
Because everybody had DeMar Hamlin penciled in for that, and Flacco comes in and steals it. So, yes, Flacco can still play. He's 40, but he can still play, and we saw it last year with the Colts. The problem is sometimes he gets a little too happy with the ball. He's got a little of that Favre in him. I guess it starts with F, it has an A, but he's got 6 letters. Favre had 5, so
right.
Close enough. But anyway, Flacco is a guy who would be an option as well. And I'm surprised he hasn't already gotten a job somewhere because this is a guy who brings the pedigree, he brings the experience, he brings the knowledge, and he's one of the rare high-end franchise quarterbacks because he was. It's easy to forget it, but he was. Not many of those guys who were ever the highest paid player in the NFL will humble themselves to just hold a clipboard and be a backup, but he loves it, and he's not going to stop as long as he physically can do it.
You mentioned the Niners earlier, and from the Deebo Samuel trade through the punter Pat O'Donnell and Elijah Mitchell and just so many. First and foremost, they had a Super Bowl winning window, and they missed it. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and now they're rebuilding, refocusing, changing the tire on a moving car. I don't know what you want to call it. And There was an item from Mike Silver of The Athletic over the weekend about a quote-unquote organizational reset for the 49ers. And it looks like they're going to stop paying huge money to guys. Because what's happened in the past is guy wants a contract, front office drags their feet, Cowboys style, and then at the end of the day, Kyle Shanahan sufficiently rattles the cage to get the front office to bust open the piggy bank and pay the guy. And the problem is you pay a guy late after he's missed time in the offseason, missed time in the preseason. That impacts his effectiveness the year afterward. Well, now it looks like they're just not going to pay. They're going to hold firm. And Brock Purdy, the quarterback, is going to be the first test case. And the challenge is, there's this presumption they're going to hand him $45-50 million a year. Well, if he doesn't have the help around him, like I've seen nothing from Brock Purdy that makes me think he's ever going to be a top 5 guy or a top 10 guy. You're going to pay him like that and then just hope that he can find a way to keep winning games when he doesn't have the talent around him. Now, the 49ers got to the point where they had to pay all these guys because they did a great job of drafting and developing. That is the tack they've taken now. They're going to save the money, they're going to draft and develop, and they're going to hope they can build up again a team that is a championship caliber type of an organization. But along the way, it creates, I think, potential fractures between the front office and Kyle Shanahan to the point where he could say eventually, I want to go somewhere else.
Ooh.
I mean, I think all things are on the table now because you're seeing a strategic shift by the 49ers and a dramatic change to the organization, and they are slipping back to the pack, and let's see what happens. If they fall off altogether, you could see a lot of changes in San Francisco.
All right, well, here's where I need some help.
PFT.
Here's where we need some help. All right, so all of these players with the mass exodus, okay, they could end up with like 20 to 25 comp picks. And I was reading something yesterday, and I think John Lynch, the general manager, was the one talking about it. And he was like, Baltimore, New England, and some other teams have played this comp pick game extremely well. So say they end up with like 20-ish, 25-ish comp picks.
You know they're not going to get that many. You know you're exaggerating, right?
Right. But I mean, if you have them en masse, do they all go in the same draft?
Yeah, what happens is, and this is a formula that nobody really seems to understand completely except the Ravens, who have perfected the art of maximizing compensatory draft picks. It's based on, for example, this year, it's your free agency gains and losses. It's the net. Like if you go out and sign more guys via unrestricted free agency, not guys who have been cut or guys who you sign once the window closes on the comp pick formula, but unrestricted free agents. Contracts expired. They become free agents on the first day of the league year. If you sign more than you lose, you don't get anything. You have to lose more than you sign, and then the formula kicks in, and it's based on performance and age and all sorts of things.
Got it.
And that's one of the reasons why the Vikings ended up with a third-rounder from last year, losing Kirk O'Chains. That third-rounder was one of the things they got from that process where guys left versus guys coming in. And so that's what the 49ers are trying to do this year. Now, it doesn't apply when you cut someone or trade someone.
Right.
The Deebo Samuel trade doesn't mean anything to it. Cutting Javon Hargrave doesn't mean anything to it. Cutting Kyle Juszczyk doesn't affect it. The Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga signing with the Broncos, those are two moves that will fall into that bucket. And others who have their contracts expire and leave, that becomes part of that formula. And look, to me, and I got a lot of respect for John Lynch, but that's just making chicken salad. That's the silver lining on a storm cloud that's throwing lightning bolts into the facility. Oh, I mean, we're losing all these guys. Well, at least we'll get some comp picks. Okay, fine. They come a year from now, and then you got to use them right, and then you got to develop those guys. I don't think they did it because they had this bright idea of, hey, how do we maintain a Super Bowl caliber team? I know. Let's let our key free agents walk, and let's get comp picks for them next year.
All right. Lastly, the Cousins piece, the Cousins Covenant at ProFootballTalk.com, I believe, yesterday. For those who missed it, what did you write, and what do you think is next for Chains?
There is a misconception out there that if the Falcons don't cut or trade Kirk Cousins by the 17th, or actually it's the 16th, the 5th day of the league year, they got to get him off the roster by the close of business on the 4th day of the league year, which is March 15th. If they don't get him off the roster by then, they don't owe him $10 million. They don't have to write him a check for $10 million. They already owe him $27.5 million fully guaranteed this year, period. As of the 16th, he has a $10 million roster bonus that isn't due until next year that goes from being injury guaranteed to fully guaranteed. Okay, so fine. It becomes fully guaranteed. If they cut him after this year, do you really think he's going to make and take the minimum next year and say, oh, joke's on the Falcons, they have to pay the difference between $1.2 million and $10 million? Well, all he's going to make next year is $10 million. He's not going to only make $10 million next year. So I think the Falcons can look at this and say, we don't care about that $10 million because we'll cut him. He'll go somewhere else. And, unless he retires or decides to take a year off, he's going to make more than $10 million. So they're not swayed by that. I think from their perspective, it's a pretty simple proposition. Number one, you better have two quarterbacks who can play because you never know what's going to happen to your starter. Number two, we already paid him $62.5 million for 1 year.
Jeez.
It's only $27.5 million for this year. $27.5 million is nothing compared to what they paid last year. And when you combine his salary and cap number with Michael Penix's salary and cap number, and that's what you have for your top two quarterbacks, that's not out of line with the rest of the league. So we'll just keep him to be the backup. Now, he doesn't want to be there. Oh, well, that's one of the risks you take when you sign a free agent contract. There's no commitment they're not going to draft your replacement. There's no commitment they're not going to bench you. And now they hold his rights. And I can understand why he'd want out. I can understand why he'd want to meet with the owner and try to get out. But, Paul, at the end of the day, right now, and maybe they're just playing a game here. Maybe it's all, an elaborate game of chicken. But that $10 million is not flowing out of Arthur Blank's bank account on the 16th. That money is for next year. And if it plays out the way I think it will, they'll never have to pay it, or they'll pay it and then they'll get it all back.
Terrific work, specifically at the website, ProFootballTalk.com. And I'll call you next week if you have time, all right?
Hey, Paul, one last thing.
Yeah.
Son of Mine ebook is free today.
Ooh.
It was yesterday and today. Okay. We had a great day Monday, and I got a little loopy about it, and it's free. You can get it at Amazon. Get the ebook, Son of Mine, free, but it's only today.
Wow. Son of Mine, the sequel to Father of Mine, free Learn more at ProFootballTalk.com, but also go find it at Amazon only today. Thank you very much.
See you, man.
Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com.
Oh, my God. Kirk O'Chill.